All right, zoning board, you are live. You are recording. Phone lines are opened. Go for it.
Thank you, Matt. Welcome, everybody, to the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for October 29th, 2024. We have two public hearings this evening. I'll read the first one into the record. The applicant is Margaret Podniazinski at 79 Bryan Road in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-68-3-9. The size and location is 13,166 square feet at 79 Bryan Road, Montauk Beach, Hither Hills, section map 2, lots 1166 through 1169, filed July 11th, 1940 as map number 1315 in Montauk. The description is to allow a one-story wood deck to remain 11.9 feet from the front yard lot line where 20 feet is required. The relief sought is a variance of 8.1 feet pursuant to 255-1110 of the East Hampton Town Code to allow a one-story wood deck to remain 11.9 feet from the front yard lot line where 20 feet is required. The zoning district is B residence, Zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. And council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
Yes, I've reviewed the affidavit of service and posting. Everything appears to be in order, and the board has jurisdiction over this.
Thank you. And whose report is this?
Mine.
Oh, go ahead, Terry.
Okay, so I'm standing across the street from the property. You can see it was posted, it was properly posted. Next. I did take a shot. This is looking southward on Bryan Road toward Old Montauk Highway and Madison Drive. Next. This is in the other direction. I took these because it was mentioned in the TAM how Bryan Road is similar to another location that we had not that long ago, and it curves around, and the way in order for the right of way and buffers to be met, that this is very common in this area of Hither Hills. Anyway, so I did take the roadway. It's hard to see that it curves around, but it does. Next. Now I walked up to the property. This is the deck that's in question for the variance, and you can see in the back. You can see vegetation here, and then actually I'm standing on pretty much on the property line, and behind me is a lot of the vegetation you saw with the posting that was behind that. So there's a mix of vegetation. There's some oak trees and all. Next. And now I step back from the deck and shot across. Now, in the distance there, you can see the next door neighbor's house, and you can see the terrain and the vegetation. Everything is very similar. And next, we just went to the other side of the deck, and that just shows it from the other direction on the other side of the house. And then next. Now I'm standing at the top of the driveway next to the decking that I just had to form a picture, and that shows the rest of the property. And you can see everything is very well vegetated. The neighbors' houses are not in sight. And that's it.
Thank you. Do we have the applicant here this evening, or agent?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Anthony Shakowski, architect, 255 West Main Street, Bayshore.
Okay, you want to raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
Thank you.
So again, the deck in question is a section of not the entire deck, but a small portion of the deck, which when you draw a 20-foot setback line from the property line, it cuts off the corner, and it is approximately about 75 square feet, while the entire deck is around 400 square feet. So we're talking about 18% of the deck area. And as you can see in this survey, where it is depicted as orange, that's the corner of the deck that is in question. If you take a look at the survey, it does show contours And as you can see at the house, the contour is at elevation 107. While if you look down towards the road, it drops down to 98 and then 93. So from the road itself, the deck, in addition to the vegetation that's in front of the property line, due to the drop of the elevation, the deck is really not visible at all from the street, and it does not cause any kind of site implications for any of the neighbors in question. So we're asking if the board would be able to provide a relaxation on this modification to the existing deck. And my understanding was that there are other similar projects that the board has approved similar to this deck that's in question.
Anybody have any questions?
I don't. Now, the only thing I wanted to clarify was whether it was done in 2015 from the overheads, and maybe we can wait for the planner to show us that. It wasn't quite clear exactly when that deck was added on.
Well, the deck
squared off,
was
like-
there, my understanding, the deck was there the entire time. As you can see from this survey, the question is just that orange section. The deck was always there from the original house. I believe there were some wood deterioration that occurred. Some posts had to be repaired. And as you can see, this section of the deck that's closest to the house was never really usable. And I think the owners never really understood why they built it that way. And so when they had repaired the deck, they must have repaired it to square that off. So at least part of that deck would be usable space. But as you can see, I believe that when you strike that 20-foot setback from the property line, it does cut off that entire corner. So the deck was always there. It's not that it was constructed as a new deck like that.
So from the time of the
Oh,
2005 purchase,
I was
it
just
was,
gonna
it
ask that.
existed. When they
Yep.
purchased it in 2005, that deck was in place.
That deck was in place, correct? Mhm. Yes,
With the additional
Same thing.
75 feet, without it.
with the additional 75 square feet.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure.
yeah, that's the part that I wasn't clear on whether
Perhaps
that was
the-
done.
the
No, it says in a letter, though,
Perhaps the
Yeah,
owner
the-
could,
the
you
applicant-
know,
the owners
wrote a
that the deck in question was part of the property we purchased as is and has
Yeah.
been present since our acquisition of the home in 2005.
I'm sorry, yes.
It was already there.
The owner is here, perhaps they could clarify that. I believe it was.
Well,
There's a
You'll have to-
Steve-O.
If you want to come up, you can come up, announce yourself, who you are, and then I'll swear you in.
Here's the Steve-O.
Hi.
Margaret Podniesiński.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
So when we purchased the home, the deck was there.
Correct.
However, the deck was not in a good shape. So my husband fixed the deck and we did square that corner, not knowing that, we were too close to the street. So we did that.
yeah,
in-
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the
Yeah,
deck
it
the
just
deck
wasn't
was
clear whether
definitely
you did
needed
it
a fixing.
was
It was a
there.
really
Okay.
old deck. He fixed it at.
Mhm.
We kind of thought it was awkward. So we fixed it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
No.
Thank you. We're going to hear from the planning department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you, Morgan?
Hello, good evening, Board. Morgan Slater for the Planning Department.
Morgan, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So it's pretty straightforward dimensional variance application. The lot is undersized for B residence zoning, and it's located on the north side of Bryan Road on a bit of a bend. So has some unique constraints. It's not extremely unique, but I believe that bend does offer some, uniqueness to the property. There is about 20 feet of additional land between the property line and the road that is not included in the lot area, which you can see on the survey and on the aerial, and that's pretty characteristic of this part of Montauk, known as the residence section. They all have kind of large road right-of-ways. There is existing mature vegetation on the property that kind of acts as screening, and there's also mature vegetation in the road right-of-way that isn't technically on the property. So that's kind of it. If the board has any questions, I can answer them. With regard to when the deck was built, there are aerials, and it looks like it was squared off in about 2015, 2016.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Now, just on the survey date, I have two surveys. They were received at different times. One has the contours and one doesn't, but I don't see anything different on them other than the contours.
Yeah, I think there was the digital survey that we got originally didn't actually have the dimension showing the setback from the front yard. The physical survey did. So I think that's why there was a resubmission. And there was another dimension that needed to be shown just to make sure that the gravel patio met the side yard setback, because it's exactly 15
And
feet.
that's showing on the survey that's received February 6th, 2024?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a request from someone who wants to keep the record over public comment because they can't be here tonight. And I'm going to say we should
this
not allow
hearing?
that. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not this one, it's the
Yeah,
next
it's the
one.
next
My bad. Okay, my bad. All right, move on from that. We're going to have this closed. Make a motion. Quick.
Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, there are 0 calls on the line. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Anybody else here would like to address this application? Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so the application of Margaret and Thaddeus Podnisinski at 79 Bryan Road in Montauk, tax map 300-68-3-9, and make a motion to close the public hearing and the public record.
I'll second it.
I concur.
Thank you. I concur. Next application is Bendigo Beach LLC at 2 Bendigo Road, Amagansett. Thank you. Amagansett at 300, 152, 1-11.1. The size and location is 505,355 square feet. That's 11.601 acres at 2 Bendigo Road in Amagansett. The description is to construct a 5,416 square foot residence, 600 square foot detached garage, 4,172 square feet of decking, including a roof deck, 713 square feet of pool with associated pool equipment and fencing, sanitary system, pervious driveway, and to allow clearing and grading on a parcel containing freshwater wetlands, beaches, primary dunes, and beach vegetation. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code. The closest structures have been a proposed 161.7 feet from the primary dune crest and 103 feet from the wetland. The zoning district is A5 residence, VE12, VE10, AE10, and flood zones. The secret class is type 2. Council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
Yes, I've reviewed the affidavits of service and posting. Everything appears to be in order, and the board has jurisdiction.
Thank you. And we have Board Member Mehring to give the report. Thank you.
So much. Okay, first photo. This is the posting that appears on Bendigo as I just want to orient a little bit. So there is an access road that comes off of Bendigo, and you can see the address 2 never appears. You see the other two addresses. This goes over a culvert bridge, and then it goes to the right all the way. It will be the access road that goes all the way down to the property in question, which basically winds up abutting Cranberry Hole Road right at the corner of Bendigo and Cranberry Hole. Next slide. This is the view. I popped down to Cranberry Hole. You can see the intersection in the distance there with Bendigo. I did want to note that it was not posted on this side. And when I read I wanted to ask council, when I read the code for posting, the code is kind of clear that properties should be posted on the roads where the lots abut. So I just wanted to raise that because there was no posting where the frontage of the lot is on the road.
There's a lot front on Cranberry Hill?
Yes, it fronts on Cranberry.
Yeah, I was looking at that
Comes
earlier.
through the Cranberry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. So there was no posting on that side. And when you look at the posting, it was visible, obviously, from that access road, but there was nothing on that access road near the posting. And that posting is kind of far from, where the lot is. So I just wanted to raise that and ask council.
I mean, I have the survey up. Let me just look at this and the section of code, which I'm familiar with, but want to read right now. But
Right.
we did already open the hearing.
Okay, well,
So we can note it and then maybe take that into account if there are requests to leave it open. Thank you.
and the other thing about this photo before I move back onto the property, this is the side where that marshland and wetlands are really in play. None of what, is here is really in play in the construction application. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, so it's from the very end of that access road. I guess that's where there'll be a driveway. So this is generally where I popped onto the property. Better perspective in the next slide. So this is the house and a detached garage that is the neighbor to I'm going to say to the left of the lot or to the north. It's really the north. And where that garage is where I walked onto the property. I don't know if that's where the driveway will go, but this is kind of where you get onto the lot. Next slide. I walked a little further into the lot. The tree line, the more dense tree line is really looking out towards Cranberry Hole, and that's in there is really where all the wetlands are. I did not go into that part of the lot. Next slide. Okay, I'm basically standing in the same place and I'm looking up towards the bay. I'm gonna move further up towards the bluff crest and the bay. Next slide. I walked up to what was probably the highest. It was very a poetic looking day today with the clouds and everything. It's beautiful. So I walked up to the top of the bluff crest, just you could see over to the water. Next slide. I'm standing in that same place and I'm looking to my right or towards the east. That is the neighboring house directly to the east. Next slide. And now just still in the same spot, again, turned and looked to the west, north, in the other direction along the shoreline. Next slide. And then with my back now to the water, again, I'm just looking all the way back towards the Cranberry Hole side of the lot. So I think this just gives a good view of roughly who the house and the development is going to be in there somewhere. I mean, the house is what's the number of 100 some odd feet from the bluff crest, but I'm just really trying to get a full expanse of the property that I think will be partly in play. Next slide. And, I never say no to a picture of lichen and I think next slide is about the same. Yep, that's sort of what the vegetation's like in the last slide. I just wanted to note that there were some posts. You can see a post there kind of in the middle of the property. It almost feels like the property was disturbed at some point in these areas, but I'm not sure really what was going on there if at some point it was disturbed in its history. That's it. Thank you.
Might have been where they did a test hole or something. I don't know. But,
maybe, yeah.
this is one of those areas in town where you just pinch yourself and you really look at the natural beauty of our town. The lichens there are just so ancient and untouched, and it's very noticeable. It's beautiful, beautiful section of town.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do we have the agent? Andy, how are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Richard A. Hammer from Biano and Hammer here representing the owners of the property. With respect to the jurisdictional issue, this is the most unusual corner lot I've ever encountered. From where the building envelope is on this property to Cranberry Hill Road, although it does abut, that's basically a forested swamp. So with the board's authority, we're here tonight. I would like to maybe leave the record open. I'll have it posted tomorrow and we can keep it open for that statutory period, just so you can solicit those comments. But from where you sit as a member of the public, you wouldn't even be able to see anything on this property. It's literally, I don't know, 500, 600, 800 feet in the property. So we posted it based on its address along Bendigo rather than, so I apologize for that. And if the board's in agreement, I'll keep going forward. All right, so this property is Bendigo Beach. They've been, the owners here have been living on the East End for a very long time. My client was actually an ocean lifeguard at East Hampton, Maine Beach when he was in high school. So this isn't, a Johnny-come-lately. This isn't a spec project. This is designed to be the family house. I have Joel Halsey as well as Sean Webb are here with me tonight. That he's the project architect, and Joel might be more familiar with technical aspects of the proposal or the project if I can't answer them, although I'm pretty familiar itself. The property itself is a pretty unusual one. My client called this a generational property when he called me about purchasing it. It's been owned by the same family long before it was subdivided in 1975. I'm sure some of you know the history of this area, the Rose and the McCalls and Devon Yacht Club. I mean, this dates back to the very foundations that probably predate the town of East Hampton. It certainly predates the town, DC wetland regulations, and NRSP regulations. Most of these properties, at least in this 4-lot subdivision, remain vacant and only were sold recently for the first time from the same family members. My client knew one of the owners and couldn't pass on the opportunity to live in this beautiful area. The original subdivision of 4 lots, one of which is improved, all share that common access point from Bendigo Road just east of the Devon Yacht Club. I do have a letter I'll submit from the Macaris. They're the owner of the other vacant lot that up the street that I thought was pretty thoughtful in that it referenced our design and it wasn't generated in a vacuum. Basically, they actually reviewed it and felt it's a project that's designed in accordance with the community standards and natural resource standards. So I'll have Joel submit that when I'm done. The coastline along this stretch is largely improved, largely to the east up to the fish factory property, which I think is where that used to be the Rowe Industries property, the owners of this entire stretch. These lots are remarkable based on both their size at 11.5 acres, and they contain a freshwater forest land, swamp area that we're proposing to protect with a scenic easement. It's really a remarkable spot. If you haven't been there, I'd say take a drive up there. The first time I visited these properties, probably 15 years ago, I closed my eyes. I had no idea I was on the East End of Long Island. I was like, where am I? I feel like I'm in upstate New York or somewhere that has a completely different biome. When my client first encountered the property, he already was coming up with design ideas that he thought would be consistent with the dunescape and the appearance of the area. For one, you'll see the house is a single story. He wanted this to be as nearly invisible from the water side of the property as possible. And this rendering, perhaps I can show the board, is the view of the property from Gardner's Bay. You'll see there's one other house visible. That's the adjacent property owned by Mr. Sullivan, who is here with us, or is here as well. But this is a proposed house designed at 1 story. The idea was to, based on the sanitary design here, the house is essentially U-shaped, and in the middle is the sanitary improvements. We're using the structure to hide the grading required to place the sanitary system and limit overall disturbance. The property is located in an AE10 flood zone. I thought this was a pretty smart design element. The elevation required for the residents, just to meet FEMA, as well as the sanitary system, are compatible and sort of blend together in the improvement zone. We did consider alternatives to this plan, but felt a 2-story structure would perhaps limit building coverage, but the trade-off would be creating it would be certainly much more visible than this structure, and it would still require extensive grading and retaining walls to accommodate the sanitary system. The project exceeds all wetland and dune crest setbacks. and the area, this coastline is predominantly stable. There are areas much further to the east that suffer from erosional forces associated with the fish factory property that I forget exactly as the crow flies, but it's pretty far up the road. In the notice, I think it was a reference to, structures are approached 103 feet from the wetlands. That structure is actually the pool fencing, which I don't think anybody paid attention to the way it was wrapped around the property, but we can certainly bring that pool fencing up and outside of jurisdiction. I think there's 150 wetlands line, so that, we didn't focus on that. I think the next closest structure, if you take that fence out of consideration, is probably, actually, Joel can tell me that. Joel has terrible eyes, but I think.
No matter what. I don't know my eyesight.
Oh, okay. It's 160 from the bluff crest, but it well exceeds the jurisdictional limit, I think, the 150 foot.
Smaller.
Yeah, on the cut sheet, but you'll see that with taking that fence off, everything is well beyond the setback. Yeah, it's certainly outside of jurisdiction otherwise, other than the NRSP. I would say we spent a lot of time figuring how to build this project without causing undue disturbance to the neighborhood and staying within the proposed limits of clearing. The property has a difficult access, and it is similar in a lot of respects some other projects we've been involved with. We have agreed that during the construction, and this is in connection with the neighbors and Sullivan, there'll be no parking within the common easement area. That's an easement that's supposed to allow passage, but it's certainly not going to be a parking lot. And the property itself, which we have a pretty tight clearing limit on, we're going to use for the staging of material deliveries and provide space for delivery trucks to ingress and egress. Basically, they have to be able to turn around. We're coordinating this with our most immediate neighbor, Mr. Sullivan, make sure we respect and obey all the restrictions, as well as protect vegetation off-site and also in the right-of-way. Basically, we don't want this road or the right-of-way to get unduly disturbed by our construction activities. Mr. Sullivan has already taken great pains to install electrical service and the transformer that will service all four of these lots with light on the property, and we're going to share the easement with these existing improvements and do so in a manner that we're not going to have to, disturb any of the existing improvements that are there already. Obviously, Mr. Sullivan already has water and power. We're going to try and work in accordance with the late easements. Our planning will take into consideration, as well as have site meetings with David and his representatives prior to any construction commencing on site in the event that we succeed in getting all our permits and actually proceed to a construction phase. I've also agreed that if and when we select a contractor at some point, they'll be contractually required to abide by these agreements and implement measures necessary to protect the natural features as well as the existing services to the property. I did review the proposed mitigation measures in the TAM. We would agree that the scenic easement was one thing that was, it's basically an expanded scenic easement that will encompass the 100-foot setback. So everything will be essentially absorbed into that, and it will provide permanent protection to the swamp areas as well as some of the upland areas there as well. The pool fencing proposed an area that was proposed to be revegetated. I think we can tighten it up. Basically, it can be outside of the 150-foot jurisdiction. I think it would be just as unnoticeable. I don't think any thought went into where they put it. The project complies with all required setbacks, depth to groundwater, and we've submitted, I think, fairly impressive drainage plans, sediment control plans, and a revegetated plan that was prepared that seems to be acceptable. It contains woody and grassland species matched to the successional vegetation types found on the property. Basically, we've evaluated and plan to construct this project in a sensitive manner and within the stated boundaries of clearing. At the end of construction, we'll have about 19,000 square feet of final clearing, most of which will have structures and improvements within it, driveways, decks, that whole area. The rest of the site is largely going to be kept natural, and it sort of blends in with the design as well. That was sort of the whole nature of this design, was to try and keep it as beachy and cottagey as possible. We did have an engineer assess the bearing capacity of the culvert bridge that's mentioned in the TAM today. I believe they were out there today. I don't have this report yet. I would like to submit this to the board when it's complete. It'll probably be, I don't know, couple days. out there. Clearly, we would abide by any recommendations or limitations that are required to protect this feature. I think Mr. Sullivan's an actual engineer and maybe could speak more authoritatively to it. However, in my past, I've seen a lot of these culverted bridges that actually are pretty strong. That's one of the stronger ways to build a bridge, and we can look to ancient Rome. I think we're agreeable to all other suggested mitigation measures in the TAM, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And if I can't, Sean or Joel can as well.
Do you have any questions?
Yes. Thank you for, talking about working with the neighbor and not wanting to disturb the vegetation on the right-of-ways. Can you just talk a little bit more? And there was not a formal construction protocol in the file yet, or I don't know if we're going to have one, but I just can you talk a little bit more in terms of where you're going to stage? Is it going to be on the property where your driveway access and the parking court is going to be? And how are you going to handle and deal with the sands that are excavated that I would imagine are going to want to stay on the property?
Well, our sedimentation control plan does show areas on the property we've designated for sediment, where we're going to stage it, and we're going to use as much of the material as possible to backfill around the improvements here, just so that we retain the natural soil and can create the same dunescape. With respect to how they stage construction workers, I do know that
materials and everything, yeah.
But the tools and everything is delivered to the site by one, and all the employees are vanned in. As a matter of fact, we don't have the selected contractor, but a likely contractor on this has told me that they have 2 Sprinter vans that they use to truck the employees into these sites. This kind of brings me back to one of the properties we did on Old Montauk Highway. You want to talk about a property that's very difficult to get people in and out of, those, the ocean side, where you have a lot of topography, no area to park, and there's no available parking along the Old Montauk Highway on the street side. It would just be insanity. What the contractors have done in the past for working in those sites, state park passes. They can park at Hither Hills. They can park at train stations. That's typically where they do, is they aggregate people in available public parking, pick them up, drive them to the site, and then drive them back at the end of the day to keep the vehicles away from the construction areas. There is a town beach kind of at the end. I don't know if it's Little Alberts, Big Alberts, outside of, busy summer months. Those are, I think, available parking as well that you could easily park. But I would think the most likely place for most of these are if you purchase your building materials from a local supplier, they will allow you to stage their construction vehicles, like at Amagansett Building Supply or one of those. They have large areas that's one of the things they do to accommodate contractors.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's key to this area, is the less traffic and the staging of these material deliveries, the better. We don't want to block the access for Mr. Sullivan. We just want these things to be dropped off and the trucks egress, no additional parking. And that will be built into our contract with whatever contractor we have here.
More questions?
You have more, Jane?
No, go ahead.
You did mention a construction protocol. We didn't prepare one for this site because it doesn't have some of the same characteristics of steep slopes or adjacent wetlands. We actually are pretty far from most of the protected features. The property itself is predominantly flat in the area that we're going to be constructing. It's also predominantly sand, so I don't expect we're going to have a lot of drainage and runoff problems. It percolates. I'm happy to prepare and submit something to the board, but I think more importantly, it's going to say, hey, we're going to abide by our limits of clearing, and we're going to move people in and off this site and using designated off-site parking areas.
So Andy, in terms of the culvert, you said you'd be submitting additional documentation, but will it be a protocol that addresses the adequacy of dealing with the vehicular?
Yeah, whatever the engineer's recommendations would be.
Because it doesn't seem like in the past 20 years there's been any kind of a maintenance protocol, so.
That I would
Right.
doubt, having driven up there myself. However, I have seen some of these culverts where during construction access for the heavier trucks, they might recommend sheet pile be laid on top of it. Basically, you're increasing the footprint
Right.
of the load in a manner, and whatever those recommendations are, we would certainly implement
Thank you.
them, and I'll
That's what
I'll
I'd
share
like to
that
see
with the
that. Yeah,
board
thank you.
as soon as I have them.
One of the things I look at when we do these type of applications is the end result of the duneland characteristics of the site. So looking at the survey contours relative, and I know you have a planting plan, it looks like LaGuardia is trying to preserve that. There's especially to the southwest of the pool. Doesn't show on that. It shows it on the survey. There's a little dune swale there and stuff. So it looks like LaGuardia is carrying that through in their final.
Yeah, I do
So
remember.
I just want to stress that point, that.
Yes,
that-
when they started the design, before they did anything, they did aerial drone photography over this area, which is pretty easy to do now, but they were able to use that to actually project the areas of vegetation we wanted to avoid and the areas that were most amenable to actually disturbing and being able to restore it in a manner that would be consistent with what is there today. So that's kind of how this footprint design and where we built on the property was dictated. I mean, that obviously in wetland setbacks, but we had a lot of wiggle room in that, and I think we cited it in the most predominantly flat and least remarkable of all the vegetation types that we found on the site. As a matter of fact, standing in the building envelope here, a lot of it's open sand. That's just kind of the nature of this property.
So the one question I think that Tam brought up, and I think we should have a conversation about, is the easement and where that lies, right? And there's a easement defined by the subdivision, which hasn't been filed yet. It needs to be filed.
That's correct.
By
I
the
believe the
permit.
subdivision required it to be filed before issuance of a building permit.
And I don't know if we have an example of where that easement lies.
I do
we?
believe, do you want me to use your new pointer?
I do.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, this is the original subdivision easement.
Is this where they were recommending it,
Yeah.
though?
Do you want me to put the regular survey back up so you can use the pointer?
You know, you can.
Okay.
So this is the subdivision easement.
Used it, yep.
So this is the scenic easement. We are, which one are we? We are this one, right?
Yes, the furthest to the.
Okay, so it's at the
The furthest to
bend?
the
You're
east.
the one that comes to a point down
Ends from
on
the
the south.
southern property line.
Yeah.
So now we're. So this is the subdivision.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah,
Oh, scenic easement.
Yeah, that's correct.
Subdivision.
Yeah, so that's the scenic easement. I believe as it's revised, I don't know if we have the exact dimension on the survey, but we're adding a whole area that would correspond.
All right, that's probably, yeah, if you're adding some, where would that be defined as? You have,
so this is the 100-foot wetland setback here.
It would go right up to this.
is that the 100-foot
Yeah.
wetland setback?
That's correct. And the driveway access, almost all of our structures are well landward of that area, but we would be adding in, I'm assuming that the old subdivision line is somewhere,
Scale, not with me now.
somewhere here.
Right.
You know, obviously, we've now identified wetlands in the
Across
field
the
in a
structure?
different manner, so we're extending that proposed easement by about 100 to 125 feet.
By definition, can we say that's going to be the
I can
100-foot
see it from
setback
here.
from
It's
wetlands?
187 feet to.
So that's how you're going to define it, and
Is
we're
that-
going to put that back on a map
Yeah,
now.
there's actually on this survey, this is the 100-foot
Yeah,
wetland
okay.
setback line. We'll just go, encompass that within an easement.
And the subdivision one is how much from the wetlands?
It goes through the wetlands.
Goes through.
Through the whole
It
wetland?
goes through the wetlands.
The subdivision, yeah, went kind of like
Okay.
that.
Do you know what, they could go 150 feet?
Yeah.
I think it was
You're right.
more like that.
Yeah,
So this area below was the subdivision, scenic easement. We're adding an additional all of this area.
We don't have the number yet on the total square foot area of this total revised scenic easement yet?
It was 5 points.
It was 6.5.
Yeah, so how much we're adding to it?
We're probably gonna be 7 to 8.
Okay. Would you consider moving it to the 150 wetland setback?
150
In the house.
foot structure.
No, it's
They'd
not,
be in the house.
no, it's not in the house.
Well, it's right up in here. I think that might be a little too much. 150 setback is beyond there, you have no impact on the wetland. There might be foreseeable improvements, including, accessory parking areas or whatever that would be perfectly allowable within that area. Granted, the board's going to have the ability to review any activity that's proposed within the 150 foot setback. Right now, the closest to that wetland line is the pool, and it's 187 feet from the wetland. So I think this is a great, we're giving up quite a bit more, but I wouldn't want to hamstring them back up there. What if in 30 years they try to retreat from an eroding shore? We just don't know, basically. And I think, bringing that up to 150 foot setback would be somewhat unprecedented under our code.
Okay, and then going back to the pool fencing, which kind of looks kind of wild on this circular inset that you have here. Can that be pulled into the pool?
Yeah, I would think that
To the pool
what an easy
envelope?
condition would just say that the pool fencing will comply with the 150-foot jurisdictional limit. Anywhere outside of that jurisdictional limit, I think is perfectly viable. And it would encompass the entirety of that building envelope.
And on the east side, it has it going around, well, you don't see it on that diagram, it's hard to see, in the little circular inset.
Yeah, my
Going
recollection.
to the east, and then it's actually running off the property a little bit. They could pull that back to the,
Off of this property, went down here. Is it the green? Oh, that's the green. Yeah, so we're bringing it up somewhere through here. That's the 150-foot setback, so if it's north of that boundary line, that will create another 50-something.
yeah, and to the east, you're pulling it over, so it's
Yeah,
more in the pool envelope.
yeah, I mean, it would have to obviously. I believe most of that area is going to be heavily revegetated, and then, it's going to be invisible wherever it goes on that property. Truthfully, pool fencing has very minimal impact on the wetlands, but I would assume
Lot
it
of
might even be
impact on
better to have the
wildlife,
pool
though.
fencing up on the 100-foot setback because you're preventing people from going beyond it. I mean, there are, on this hand, 5 fingers, basically, but I'm happy to say that, yeah, we can put it out of jurisdiction on the property, and I think we'll pull it dramatically away from that, but I've always been a proponent of fencing scenic easements myself, just because it's really hard to wind up on the other side of a fence and say, how did you get there? You had to climb over it. Why did you do that?
But one of the standards is for the movement of wildlife too, so to minimize the pool, to protect the pool and not go beyond that is
Okay.
a plus.
I just want to say that in the time I've been on the board, I haven't been on a more impressive piece of property. Environmentally, it's got more going on than anything I can think of. I've seen many beautiful parcels, obviously, but when we go from the significant wetlands that are there, and they are significant, there's a man-made water feature, but it also adds to the environment. And then, as was pointed out by the chair, the dunescape here is just extraordinarily impressive. When I'm standing at the crest of the dune and looking down to sweep to the beach, I don't know when I can think of another piece of beach anywhere that is quite so impressive. Having said all that, we're talking about your application, and I think it's been intelligently considered. I think that what we've talked about here and what you're trying to do, and we see that we're not looking for variances from wetlands, we're back in there. I am interested, if Joel could show us that a little closer.
Yeah.
I'm interested in what that elevation to look like. I see that the first floor elevation of the closest portion of the sea, can you hold it up? I can't see it. Yeah, so what is it going to look like looming above the dune relative to the other houses? That's interesting to me. I see that there's a 17.5 foot elevation for that area closest to the water, and then it drops off by 5 feet coming back as part of the architecture of it all. I think this is part of what's somewhat significant here, is what are we doing in terms of that elevation? I think that's something to consider. The other thing, though, I think we can simplify this in conversation saying that, well, we'll be busing people in, but those of us who've been around construction sites know that doesn't, I'm sorry, thanks, Joel, that we're not limited to just men who are bringing hand tools in to be carpenters and all. We've got a lot of delivery trucks. We've got plumbers who have to be close enough because they've got a lot of equipment. That protocol and what we're going to do to protect the neighbors' rights when that property, and I think where we park it would be very easy for us to give permission to this in the end and then find that parking area got extended because it's a big project that's going to require a lot of people. So I think that it was brought up by Member Berger. I think I would want to see in a protocol an exact definition of what you've already described, where they're going to park, how they're going to park, how this is going to happen. Now, if you go down that drive, it's gorgeous, but it's narrow. There's not parking either side. And if people start to do that, they'll be on someone else's parcel because almost immediately you're off your own parcel that is coming in with that access. I think when I look at this and I consider how unique a spot it is, I want to make sure that the collateral damage done during construction is an absolute the minimum because it's really special, and you know that, you've said it yourself. It's a special parcel that's got to be respected. So I commend the idea that we've looked at the most intelligent way to build a significant home in this spot, finding a location, keeping it from being second story. But I am continually going to be concerned about this, and I'm going to be interested in what the planners have to say because it's going to be very difficult to drop this thing from a helicopter without some other potential
I
damage.
absolutely agree with you about the protocol in terms of trying to identify. I wish I had a contractor here to say, hey, why don't you tell them, John, but I don't right now, but I think I can tell you exactly what provisions, and we can put together a protocol that takes good account of everything that you're concerned about. But you're right, there are trucks that have to be on site. Some of these, a gutter truck has the welding devices in it, there are certain things. So there's going to have to be enough site access for a couple of these trucks plus deliveries to come in and out. And I will say the owner rents the house right up the street. So he's, in this neighborhood as well and really wants to, be a good neighbor to everybody that's in this neighborhood. So that those are all the same issues he's going to raise. So I would definitely like the opportunity to submit something that you can make as a condition of your approval or something that can have a little bit more fleshed out protocol that you can evaluate compliance with as this thing moves down the pipeline.
I think looking at this with that as well is you do have some staging, in the front in the west part of this with where the parking is going to go and stuff like that. But the concern also would be overflow parking. You can't be parking
Off-site.
on that road off that site.
Absolutely not.
You cannot do that on the sides of this property.
I do expect Mr. Sullivan to stand up and say if they do park on there, he's going to slash tires or whatever, and that is perfectly fine. That would be my position as well if I lived along that property. We have to be very respectful of the constraints and accommodate them in whatever fashion we can.
Any other questions?
No, I think I'll have a question for
We
Morgan.
can go to Morgan, I guess.
Thank you.
Hello,
Morgan.
Slater for the Planning Department again. So this property was created as part of a 1975 minor subdivision that created 4 lots. I'm actually going to pull the area. The 4 parcels within this subdivision are accessed by a pervious driveway that crosses over a culvert through a man-made creek on the westernmost of the 4 parcels, and that you can kind of see it. It's just a ditch. Can I use the mic here?
Yeah, everyone wants to use the magic wand.
So you can see the ditch here, and then it kind of discharges into Gardner's Bay along there. And this is really, so the ditch doesn't really extend all the way onto the subject parcel. It's mostly the forested swamp that is here. But this entire wetland system, I reviewed the planning department's wetland delineations in this area, and it really just extends from essentially Devon Yacht Club all the way through here. And I estimated it's about 50 to 60 acres total, but obviously fragments. So it's quite substantial. The lot has water frontage to Gardner's Bay to the north, the substantial forested swamp to the south, and that is acknowledged in the 1975 subdivision. And there is a freshwater swale on the adjacent property to the west that was identified by the planning department in 2022. The southern lot line of this property does run along Cranberry Hole Road, but the address is Bendigo Road because that's where it's accessed. There's pristine secondary dune land and beach vegetation that extends to the primary dune crest and the subject parcel. So the subject parcel essentially contains all natural features that are protected by the East Hampton Town Code. The project is proposed within the secondary duneland habitat, and it meets all wetland and dune crest setbacks. Wind-driven processes form the duneland and characterize successional vegetation that grows on the property. In the area of proposed construction, there are thickets of tree and shrub species indigenous to duneland habitat with patches of bare sand and beach grass throughout. The maximum allowable clearing on the property is 52,904 square feet, and the project proposes a temporary clearing limits of 28,184 feet, which will then be revegetated to final clearing limits of 19,460 feet. The revegetation plan in the file is satisfactory to the planning department, and it predominantly includes species that should be able to withstand and adapt to the coastal climate. It's a little more shrubby than what's existing on the property, but I think that is partially, due to the need for screening for the residents. It seems like the pool fence can be located out of jurisdiction. If that can be tightened up, then the closest structure to the wetlands to the south would be the pool, and that would be about 187 feet. So that is out of the wetland jurisdiction. The walkway leading from the driveway is about 160 feet from the freshwater swales on the adjacent parcel to the west. I'll pull that up. So all structures are essentially out of jurisdiction of the wetland. I'm going to erase my drawings. The planning department does recommend a scenic easement that extends 100 feet past the northernmost portion of the wetland on the property. The 1975 subdivision did require a 6.5 acre scenic easement, but that doesn't encompass the entirety of the wetland, which I estimate is about 7 acres in totality. The swamp to the south is one of the most pristine and unique wetland habitats found in East Hampton, so establishing an easement that encompasses the wetland and includes the 100-foot buffer is crucial to the wetland's conservation. There is a sediment control plan that outlines certain precautions that will be taken during construction, and that includes designated soil stockpile areas and washout areas. The board may want to consider a more detailed plan that addresses the staging of construction vehicles and contractor parking, because the area disturbance, it is quite tight for the project. So, it's better to show exactly where all these large trucks are going to be than to just assume that they'll be using the parking area. According to the provided cut and fill calculations, there's going to be about 1,400 cubic yards of fill to achieve the final proposed grading, and which will be help maintain the 2-foot separation of groundwater for the leaching pools and the sanitary system. The planning department requests that any excavated soils be retained on site and used for backfill, and all imported soils should be compatible with the existing conditions of the property. This will help retain the duneland character and encourage recolonization of the indigenous duneland species. That's pretty much just an overview of the site and the planning department's recommendations. If the board has any questions, I'm happy to answer them to the best of my knowledge.
Any questions for Morgan?
Yes, please. We talked a lot about the very substantial scenic easements, that's going towards the road and across all the swamps, but we didn't talk about any proposed protection or easement on the on the dune side. Can you just address that? I mean, I guess often, on properties like this, we do find some sort of easement coming on the,
Yeah, I mean, an easement on, on the Gardener's Bay side of the property, the planning department would never, say no to something like that. Really, the forested swamp was kind of like the focus of the, protected natural features, just because it's so unique and pristine. But there's definitely no opposition from the planning department to an additional scenic easement on at least, perhaps seaward of Seha or something like that. If the board is agreeable to that, that would probably be the planning department's recommendation. It would be easier for structures to be constructed, on the southern part of the parcel than on the northern part of the parcel because of, just recommendations and town code for retreat and everything like that. But another easement would definitely further protect that part of the property.
And I also know sometimes when we have applications on Oceanside, dunes, you make a specification or a condition of like a rollout mat. I noticed I think it's the property next door, it has a fairly sizable raised like bridge structure over the dune and down to the beach. And I guess we could ask the applicant if there's a plan for that, but what's your recommendation?
The planning department typically prefers to see the rollout mats as access to beach versus a set structure. The DEC kind of has the
I know it's the opposite.
the opposite preference. And with next door, that was an application that was in front of the board in 2000, and I think at that time it was just the application went with the DEC's recommendation. But, right now it doesn't appear that there's beach access proposed. If there were to be a scenic easement established on the Gardner's Bay side of the property, that would allow for 4-foot access to the beach if the applicant ever wanted to apply for that in the future. It's not proposed in the application right now. I don't know. Yeah, it's not proposed right now. But for future reference, if that is something that the applicant would be interested in applying for, just a condition of scenic easement would have to be to allow for that access to the beach. And the planning department would recommend that it be a rollout mat.
Okay, the wetland flows that goes, under the culverts and everything, that was all headed in a westerly direction, it looked like.
Correct, yes.
And it ends up in Gardner's Bay.
Yeah, it kind of flows parallel to the Devon Yacht Club boat basin. And I've never been on that property where it actually terminates, so I can't say exactly what happens there. But that is about where it terminates. It kind of makes a right angle. So, nature doesn't usually do that. So that's also a presumption that it's man-made.
The landscape plan, you had it up and it's significant. You don't have to put it up again, but my concern would be, I'm going back to how beautiful the property is. I would take a minimalist approach to re-landscaping. It seemed like an awful lot of material was going in there. So we'll have to have faith that this is going to be scrutinized by the planning department, because adding a lot of material, even if it's native, is going to be out of character with what we're looking at now.
Yeah, I mean, the planning department would be favorable to a simplified plan that prioritizes low-lying, heath species. The shrubs, how many there are, it's possible that a lot of them won't end up surviving, just because that's just the reality of a shrub-heavy revegetation plan, especially in a coastal area. So that's kind of why we would recommend more low-lying duneland heath species. But again, the shrubs that were included in the plan aren't necessarily, it's not like they aren't found within, the town of East Hampton on coastal areas. It's just in this specific spot, there's just not as many as what's proposed in the revegetation plan.
Yeah, some of it has to do with the height of that material that's going in and how it changes the look. And I mean, it's an aesthetic thing, but formalizing it beyond what it is now would seem to be a shame. Thanks. So your review of that landscape will take that into consideration.
Correct. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm good. I'm good.
Thank you.
Andy, come on. Oh, is there anybody in the public would like to address this application? No, Matt, is there anybody online?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any?
Okay, back again. I thought the suggestion regarding an easement on the water side is something that we'd be agreeable to. Just looking at it, I would say that the CHA line would be a good place to demarc kind of where, there's a 150-foot setback. It's really hard to identify that in the field. However, the CHA line, I think we could agree that we would put a scenic easement from the CHA line up to the surface waters. The only thing I'd ask is we don't have a design for a coastal structure. Our intent would be to use rollout mats, but I do know that the DEC and the town have different ideas in terms of what is allowable. So as long as the easement provides that, it shall provide for a 4-foot wide access structure to be approved, because eventually, I would assume we're going to come in for some kind of a structure, and it's going to be whatever the DEC will allow us to do.
Well, I mean, we've had issues before this board with it's a bit of a conflict. I mean, I'll admit, and I think Member Mehring brought up a good point, is that when I drove in there, that property, I saw that elevator walkway and I cringed. And so I would love to see a low-lying structure there in the future.
I think my client would too as well. As a matter of fact, you can actually walk up over, I mean, it's not a treacherous zone. There is some elevation change as you go up to the top of that dune. I think it's showing at around 12 foot there. But, I don't think we need a structural walkway in that area. However, we do need to get something that's approvable by the DEC in the town. So I think it's one of those we could punt it to later, provide the protection and say, hey, you can have a 4 foot wide. And then when we bring that in at some point in the future, we'd be happy to sit down and work with something that's going to be minimalist on this thing.
Okay. And then can I just follow up on, I think it's member Johan, who I think you were asking a little bit about the view from the beach side of the, so we don't have jurisdiction of your architecture, but is there what's the height of the structure? The flat roof?
I would call the architect, we brought him here, the guy might as well.
Oh, good, okay.
Sean Webb, former Arch.
You swear for him to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
So I think the height limit, I think we're almost like just about 4 feet below what we could be with the slope roof. So that's, and basically when you're walking on the beach, the intent was that you would basically just see a grayed out roof that would hopefully blend in with the dunes. So I think it would be very minimal from someone walking on the shoreline. I mean, that was the intent to try and do that.
I'm sorry, I missed your name. Can you just repeat your name?
Oh, Sean. Webb,
Sean.
S-E-A-N.
Thank you. Any questions?
And I think overall, just with the design, where we can, we're keeping the houses on stilts so that the actual dunescape kind of goes under them as much as possible. We're just trying to make it into the courtyard and, sort of not be in a, very...
Yeah, well, we're probably on the same page with it if you want to make it aesthetically pleasing, but of course, coming back to the same point, it's an extraordinary site, and I wouldn't want to see either the architecture or the final landscape change the character of that significantly.
Yeah, no, and I think even, and we have renderings and stuff that we didn't, put forward, but definitely the intent is to keep it very low lying and what you have there. So.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Andy? So I think we're going to keep the record open for a few things, right? So we have the protocol,
the notice.
Right. Notice, and what about the engineer's report on the?
Yes, we'll get that in as well. So those are the 3 items.
Now I can bring up the name. He'll be able to submit. There was somebody who asked for the record to be open, but it's going to be open. How much time do you need?
Well, I think what we have to do is schedule it for a continuance, right?
Well, do you want to have another night of hearing, or do you just want to submit paper?
I would just like to submit paper and have the record close unless there's the board.
I'm fine with closing the hearing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
One additional paper. We need that photo. Is that in the file?
Well, this one,
Yeah.
We can PDF it to you if we haven't already, so we'll PDF it.
But what was the request to keep the record open?
So I would say we need to have it posted for 10 days.
For posting?
Right.
Or protocol?
No, I know, but there was a request by a neighbor.
Oh, Joe Karpinski asked to keep the record open for comments. He couldn't be here tonight. In the future, I would, if they know there's a hearing, they got ample time to do it.
We're
So
keeping it open anyway.
I would not specially keep the record open just for something like that.
Keeping it open.
Sort of like showing up at your doctor's office and saying, I can't make my appointment today, but he'll have the opportunity during this period in any event, so.
Do we need an updated survey with the final easements, scenic easements on them now?
That would be, I think, after.
Or after, that'll be
after.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do is we'll notice the comments tomorrow we'll go forward to the board's, what's today, the 28th?
29th.
What's this?
the next hearing.
The 12th. So we'll have the comment period at the 12th. That'll be a 12-day period and they can submit to the board. And we should be able to get everything into you as well. Yes, we should have a protocol for you as well.
Okay.
So
we have a meeting on the 19th also, Joel, if that.
Okay, let's do the 19th.
And so you're going to say, you're going to put that new poster up. So you want to write the 19th as the date for, that makes sense to the board, right?
Yes.
They're going to put the additional poster on Cranberry Hall.
And replace the existing one with a new date.
Yes.
Do I need, sorry, Joel Halsey, swear.
You swear firm to tell the truth, all the truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Now, can I confirm, does it need to just be on Cranberry Hall or does it have to be by the driveway?
I would do
Can I just-
both notices.
Both? Yeah, okay. But I do not need to resend notices.
No. Everybody got them. If they are not here, they can watch and they'll be hearing this. We're stating it all publicly.
Okay, so I think that would be great with us, the
Okay.
19th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion.
Okay.
How long will it, oh,
Sorry, Denise?
We said till 19.
okay.
Okay, great. In the matter of Bendigo Beach LLC, 2 Bendigo Road, Amagansett, tax map 300-152-1-11.1. I make a motion to close the public hearing, but leave the record open until November 19th for, do you want me to go through the receipt of what we're, do you want me to lay them all out? A receipt of the construction protocol to notice the additional posting, the engineer's report. I believe that's it.
That's it.
Public comment, thanks.
Second, we have a second?
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
I concur. I concur.
I concur. Thank you, guys.
Everybody, thank you.
All right, that ends our hearings. We'll go into, we have other decisions. At one, I'm recused on this, so Vice Chair, if you want to lead us into this at 101 Gerard Drive LLC.
Sure.
I don't think I need to step out.
No, I don't think so. We received a letter from, after last week, we received a letter from Twomey, Latham, Shea, and Kelly, who are representing Robert Miller and Marianne McElroy, 119 Gerard Drive, and then 121 Gerard Drive. And they're asking that we, reopen the record to extend the deadline for submission of written comments until November 19th. So how does everyone feel? I think, we're closed on November 5th, so that's when our initial record was going to close. I kind of think it's fair to close it the following week, which is the 12th. I think we're being more than fair. All these documents are online, they're available. But I think the applicant did the proper procedure in order to have a public hearing. So I respect how Mr. Shea feels about extending the record, but I feel we could extend it to the 12th versus the 19th. So how does the board feel?
I was willing to give them till the 19th, and I know that the affidavits, there was some odd things that happened. Maybe ultimately some people got notice, but it was kind of late from the hearing date. So I'm willing to give them till the 19th. If
I will say that Gerard Drive, it's a lightning rod for a lot of reaction, both from neighbors and our involvement. And because there was a little confusion, I respect the position that the vice chair's taken, but I would agree with Member Berger. If this is going to be a full hearing that we can all feel good about, giving them to the 19th is fine with me.
Member Mary?
I would agree with what my fellow board members said.
Yeah, I
understand
really
also what you were saying on the 12th.
This. I'm going to make a motion that we, 101 Gerard Drive LLC, 101 Gerard Drive, East Hampton, Suffolk County, tax map number 300-41-2-11.2. I make a motion that we reopen the record for an additional.
well, it's open.
We have to reopen, we just extend, we're just going to extend our deadline
Yeah,
for the submission of written comments until November 19th.
second.
Concur.
Okay.
Recuse, thank you. We have a building permit certificate of occupancy, wine gas at 182 Shore Drive East, Amagansett, tax map number 300-107-01-03. Morgan, you want to fill us in on that?
Yeah, sure. So you all have a memo from the Chief Environmental Analyst, Brian Frank, in your file. Essentially, they're up for a CO and they have met all their structural requirements. The original determination was a partial approval for a one-story addition, deck reconstruction, a second-story balcony, a fence, a roofline alteration, and an AC unit on the north side of the house. And the board denied a variance to allow the deck to remain 6.2 feet from the southern lot line, an outdoor shower, and the AC unit to remain 2 feet from the property line. So that AC unit has been moved to the north side of the property. The deck has, this part of the deck has been removed, and the shower has been removed. One of the conditions of the approval was that in this area where the deck was removed, that beach grass be revegetated. Another condition of the approval was that no ornamental vegetation be established on the property. And upon an inspection, it didn't appear that they had planted the beach grass, and they had planted miscanthus, which is an invasive ornamental species, on the west side of the property. The surrounding area around the deck doesn't actually contain beach grass, so the planning department isn't opposed to the lack of revegetation as long as they remove the invasive ornamental miscanthus that they had planted. But it's ultimately up to the board. That is the planning department's recommendation for the certificate of occupancy, though.
So what would be the status of the C of O moving forward to get the miscanthus out?
Yeah, they would have to so in order to get their CO, they would have to get the miscanthus out, essentially. And they wouldn't be required to do that small area of beach grass where the deck was.
Mm-hmm. We looked at that in pre-meeting with Brian, and it made sense to me. It's just such a small area by the deck. He felt that it would be, not advantageous to have beach grass there, but getting rid of that line in the front of the park property makes sense to me. I don't know if you have a comment.
Miscanthus? Yeah, no,
Yeah.
miscanthus gotta
Yeah.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it absolutely makes sense.
Where the miscanthus was that an area that was supposed to be revegetated with something else? Or?
No, it's kind of, I think there's a picture of it. I'm going to pull it up. It's essentially borders the driveway. Okay. So it's, it's landscaping right here. And then there's another photo of just the surrounding, sandy area. And, there's beach grass, on the water side of this concrete, like retaining wall, but there isn't really any present on the sandy side.
Do we need a motion on that, Council?
But I wasn't really paying attention. I'm sorry. I was reading the code about something else.
I'm sorry, it's the one with the miscanthus. It's a permit certificate of occupancy thing. So we would permit it with the condition that they remove
remove the miscanthus and not be required to, it's this area right here, not be required to revegetate that little area with American beach.
We don't have. It never showed up.
It never showed up. Oh, no. I've been showing you guys things. Okay, there we go. Okay. There you see. Okay, so this is the area where the revegetation was required, I believe. Because that's where the door is. And then the area of miscanthus. Oh, and this is the surrounding sandy area that I was referencing where there actually isn't really American beach grass present. And then this is where the miscanthus is present. It's it's landscaping along the border of the driveway. So that would be required to be removed.
Okay. So no motion or motion?
The motion to allow the certificate of occupancy with the condition of.
Okay. So in the matter of Weingast, 182 Shore Drive East, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-107-01-03, I'm going to make a motion to allow the C of O without requiring the small portion of revegetation of the beach grass and the full removal of the invasive miscanthus.
Okay, should we quote the condition? Like the miscanthus, non-native is K4F?
Oh,
And
okay.
that K4M, we're okay with the beach grass not going in?
Okay, so I'm going to just extend that motion or I'll make it again, but extend the motion to be compliant with condition K4F of the determination. They're both the same, K4F, right?
K4M.
Yeah, well, one's K4M.
Where's
The beach grass is K4M.
Oh, up on the top, okay. All right. You want me to make it again? No, do it again. All right.
No, I just,
No, okay, so just to make sure the conditions on the property are consistent with the conditions K4F and K4M as were specified in the board's determination.
okay, but no, we just agreed to not do K4M.
I'm sorry.
K4M is the
It's
planting
okay.
of the beach grass for the decking. So they don't have to comply with that one, but they do have to comply with K4F.
Mhm. Right.
Okay,
We can edit that.
yeah. let's
Yeah,
just-
I mean,
Sorry, I
that's-
mean, because we
so
we
we'll-
had it
No,
verbally.
Jameson has the
I made the
verbiage.
motion
We can
verbally.
second it
your
on.
motion.
Thank you.
As
Concur,
amended.
too.
Thank you. Happy to make it again, though, anytime.
I did.
I concur.
Concur, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you for the case.
We have the draft minutes of
And
October
actually, I
22nd.
did not get to
Okay,
look
we
at
can
the
table
draft
that.
minutes. You did get them too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I got busy.
Okay. We have a resolution of Sean Trudeau and Julia Stark Trudeau at 19 Merrill's Road, Narragansett, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-106-02-48.
Okay.
Yep.
So just as a quick review, you'll remember this was an application to build a modest, about a 600 plus square foot second story addition, and also to expand decking and create a covered porch area in the rear. This was a little bit of a split vote, but the addition was approved, and the portion of the decking that required the variances, the covered portion, was denied. So that's just a little bit of background. So I've read the determination, and I make a motion in the matter of Sean Trudeau and Julia Stark Trudeau, 19 Merrill's Road, Narragansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-106-02-48. I make a motion to approve the determination as written.
Second.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur, thank you. And with that, Vice Chair, we can go on off to the Yankee game.
Wait, sorry. Can we go into exec? It will be really, really quick
Adjourn, and then we're going to
Yes.
go into
to
executive.
discuss litigation, but it's going to be 5 minutes. We won't miss the first pitch.
You kick off.
I make a motion to adjourn the zoning board of appeals meeting at 7:46 PM, and I make a motion to go into executive session.
Second it.
Concur.